Hello class, welcome to MONGIL Stardive 121. This is the course covering Monsterlings. This is a zero point 0.5 credit hour course, and I, Yuri, will be your instructor. I will not be having any office hours, but if you do have questions, put it in the comment section, and I will try to answer them there. And if I don't answer your questions, then hopefully somebody else in this class will. Now let's get into it. First, I would like to introduce myself. I, in real life, am a physics PhD student, and I specialize in experimental soft matter and data analysis. I have a very good background with analyzing numbers and fitting data, and more importantly, the thing I'm better at is experimentally determining results. And that is something that I apply to gaming, which I do a lot of in all genres, including gacha. In the MMO scene, back at when Terra Online was a game that was still alive, I consistently held top 3 warrior tank and priest in just about every single dungeon that was there. For Black Beacon, which was a game that is now dead, I was the primary guide writer and made a spreadsheet for that game, and I held rank 1 on all of the boss leaderboards in Black Beacon. Currently, I am a guide writer for MONGIL Stardive, and I maintain the MONGIL Stardive guide spreadsheet, which I will be going over momentarily. And to hopefully add a little credit to my name, I am the current holder of rank 1 Reginula. Now, I know that this is pretty much meaningless, and I will probably not be holding on to it for long, but this means that I am at least doing something right, so hopefully what I say will make sense. So, what are Monsterlings? Monsterlings are basically the relic system of this game. They are the slightly RNG thing that give your characters boosts, and they provide various effects that benefit your party and yourself. They are the primary form of gearing, and is mostly the thing that players will focus on when farming in the end game. Every single monsterling looks something like this. They give you stats up here, and they have 3 different effects. The first effect is the link effect, which will only apply when you put the monsterling in the first slot of your monsterling equips. And when you have it equipped there, on a trigger condition, which for Red Shadow is using a special skill or landing an ultimate, the monster will actually come out and perform some sort of attack based on what the monster actually does when you fight it. And they tend to apply some sort of debuff. For example, Red Shadow applies a 10% ice resist reduction and a 15% neutralization resistance reduction. More importantly than links is the rank. This is an effect that is always active, whether you put it in the first slot or the third slot, doesn't matter. Every single character can have 3 monsterlings, so they will always have 3 different rank effects active, and these provide a bonus to the user, even if it's not in the first slot. And sometimes they will provide a bonus to the whole party. For example, Amon applies an 11% crit rate bonus to the entire party, which is an extremely powerful effect. Red Shadow here provides 11% crit damage for 4 seconds on using an ice special skill, and that is just always active, and every time you click an ice skill, you just gain that bonus. The third thing that monsterlings have are traits. These are the substats that you will be grinding for to put onto these monsterlings for extra stat bonuses, and arguably, the traits are actually the most important part of a good monsterling. Now, optimizing monsterlings is a combination of all 3 of these things. You want good traits on what you have equipped, and then you want to optimize your team in such a way that you have as many relevant ranks and links active at the same time to boost the damage of your main DPS as much as possible. So this guide will be to go over that, and hopefully, class, you get something out of this for your MONGIL Stardive adventures. Now, a lot of common questions come up regarding monsterlings, and these are the 2 that I think I get the most. One is do the same monsterling stack. For example, can you use two Amons on two different characters? The answer is no. Um, Rank stacking was a thing back in 1.0, but in 1.1 they removed stacking of ranks, so you can no longer do this. Another question I get is, what link debuffs stack? And the general rule of thumb is that when they are different debuff values, they will stack. For example, Ice Fist Dude provides a 5% ice resistance shred, and that stacks with Red Shadow's 10%. But Blue Shadow applies a 10%, which does not stack with Red Shadow's 10%. Similarly, Golgak, Blue Shadow, Fiend, and Amon Shadow all have 15% element weakness debuffs. And these do not stack, but they do stack with Eldorado and Avardin's 30% element weakness damage boosts. So, everyone should be having this thought in mind right now. What monsterlings are actually good? Well, thankfully, I provide you with a handout. This is the MONGIL Stardive spreadsheet, which I will be bringing up right here. This is a spreadsheet that is actively maintained by me and a couple other people, where we go over all the things that one would ever need to know about building characters in this game. And here I have an overview of the good monsterlings, and then, most importantly, on this, on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on page 5 of this handout, there are tables including basically teams of every element built for you. That's right, I, the professor, already did all of your homework for you. So all you have to do is basically copy these and you'll be good to go. Later on in the spreadsheet, we have many other things, including some guides and descriptions for all the characters. And we have a tier list that you can read through on your own time. And we have various teams that I've used for Reginula, some common questions, and a glossary for all the terms and images used. Now, let's go back to our slideshow, shall we? We will be referring to this handout for the remainder of this lecture, so be sure to have it out in front of you to flip through the pages and see what I'm referring to. One thing you may have noticed when looking at the handout is that all of these builds have some sort of element weakness for the support monsterlings, and then we also have Ice Fist Dude on the main DPS. Why is that? Why are we making builds targeted towards playing on element? Shouldn't we make monsterlings for when we need to play off element? And that is something that I have tried as well, and it's just not very good. Here, I show A6 S5 Esther, one of the strongest characters in the game, maxed out and everything, doing some off element. And Esther can only do 750k in Reginula with very good gear. Meanwhile, if you play an on-element team of Ben, Reina, and Yanhua, they can do 800k. An A0 F1 Nare boosting Cloud can do 800k. A main DPS Reina with Yanhua and Francis supporting her does 750k. And using a slightly duped Nare with Ellie and Francis deals 780k. These are just some examples of 4-star characters. And generally, it is so much better to use an on-element team than to try to brute force it with off-element. Like, if an A6 S5 Esther can only barely match Reina when fighting off-element compared to Reina fighting on-element, can you imagine what a low dupe like A0 F1 or A1 F1 Esther does? It is just not worth investing into one element so that it can fight off element, and it is much better to create monsterlings in such a way that you can use them to fight on element across many different characters. So that brings us to, why does the general setup look something like this? Why are these the monsterlings that are chosen? First up is these two guys, Eldorado and Fiend. These are by far the most powerful support links. Eldorado applies a 30% element weakness debuff on the enemy during breaks, and Eldorado lasts the entire break, along with 5 seconds after the break ends. So it is a massive damage boost during staggers. Fiend is a long duration debuff of 15% for around 13 seconds. What he does is he comes out and throws down this totem pole and stands on top of the totem pole, radiating some fire damage every second. And because of this, it continuously reapplies the 15% debuff over the course of the entire duration of the totem, making this the longest duration 15% debuff in the game. Comparatively, Golgak Link only lasts for 6.5 seconds, Amon's Shadow lasts around 7 seconds, and Red Shadow lasts around 11 seconds, and Fiend lasts a good 13 seconds, making it the best choice. These being a 30% and a 15% boost on links far outclass any specific, like, element-specific link effects. Like, you would not be using, I don't know, Hanuo or something if you can be using Fiend. The supports will usually hold Amon and Golgak. Golgak is there for a free defense shred, as long as the support holding it hits once every 5 seconds. It is universally strong. You can just throw it in there and it'll give you your 8% defense shred and you just benefit from it. Similarly for Amon, as long as the holder of Amon can hit more than 10 times every 10 seconds, you can have free 11% crit rate for your entire team. That is an extremely powerful effect and just makes every support a crit rate buffer. Down here, we have Ice Fist Dude and Scar. Scar is here for his rank, which is free 8% boss damage, just basically conditionless. And because of how good this is, it outclasses nearly all element-specific ranks, and is a staple on just about every single main DPS in the game. There's yet to be a main DPS setup that does not use Scar. Ice Fist Dude is literally free 11% crit rate. The condition is hitting element weakness, and as stated earlier on the previous slide, you should always strive to try to hit element weakness. And 11% crit rate is insane. This is by far the strongest rank effect out of all Monsterlings, right next to Amon. There are some other very notable Monsterlings. Kustos is basically another Golgak, but only when you land a critical hit with an Earth attack. And Francis is just about used on every single team, so this is a staple on Francis, and you have access to it on every single team. Fiend, this is not Fiend, this is Duozini, is by far the most overpowered element-specific Monsterling. He has an amazing rank that shreds fire weakness by 11%, and he has an amazing link that shreds an additional 10%. It is a staple on all fire teams as the main DPS's link, and is the primary source of the entire element's power level in relationship to all the other elements. A few of the other elements have similar effects. For example, Ice has Red Shadow, which is a weaker Ice Duozini of sorts, but still very good. And Earth has Rock Fist Dude, which is kind of like a more conditional Earth Duozini that is also way weaker, but it's still basically a Duozini who has a really good link effect and a really good rank effect, so it's used. If you do not have Eldorado Guardian, you can use Avardan's Mana instead. They basically do the same thing. And as stated earlier, Blue Shadow applies the same debuff as Fiend. It just lasts way shorter than Fiend, so it's like a downgrade of Fiend. And then here we have a trio of 3 different element-specific supports. This one is Earth Resistance down on Switch skill. This is Ice Resistance down on critical hit. And this is Lightning Resistance down when hitting element weakness. These are all very powerful support monsterlings that you put on supporters to give your main DPS a big damage boost. So with all of these in mind, you should be able to understand why the teams and monsterlings sheet is the way it is, why every single team has Golgak and Amon, and hopefully get where I'm coming from for all of these layouts. Next up, there's nothing yet, but here's an example of why that is. So the general rule of thumb was this, right? If you want to make an Earth team, then the main DPS gets Rockfist Dude because it has a good link and a good rank, and the supporters get Swamp Odom, and that fills out Earth pretty much perfectly. Perfect. So the next up is the thing that I'm pretty sure everyone's been waiting for. How do you make a good monsterling with really good traits? And I will be going over the 2-trait method. There are many other methods out there. Rula is a good proponent of the 3-trait method that it has probably been floating around. I think in the Discord, the 3-trait method is like propagated a little bit more. Some people like to take a gamble at 4 traits, which requires 40 pure and is insanity, and I do not like. But the 2-trait method is the thing that I personally use, and you can see me use during streams. I made a yellow stick mugger yesterday on stream using this method. So the first step is to clear the map. Get a bunch of trash monsterlings and hope that you get the traits that you need. If you don't, you can combine all the useless monsterlings that you got and hopefully get it. Getting these yellow traits is obviously the first step to putting yellow traits onto a monsterling. And the first step after that is to combine your 2 traits into one monsterling. So say I have a Brutally with damage to monster boss enemies and Goblin Recruit with special skill cooldown, and I want those 2 traits. Then I would combine them and make a single monster with these 2 traits. This will cost 10 pure. Next is to transfer these 2 traits onto the monsterling that actually wants it. Say I want the Stick Mugger to have damage to boss enemies and special skill cooldown, then I would do something like this. This is the only 50-50 technically of the entire process, and all of your 50-50s should happen at this step, and it costs 10 pure per attempt. Now, the next step is to get your shiny new Stick Mugger with 2 traits to gold. There are 2 ways to do this. One is to use a gold upgrade stone, which you should be getting a few of during your playthrough so far. But of course, you don't have a lot, and you want to make a lot of monsterlings. So what's the other way to get them to gold? Gambling. Here's how you gamble. You take the monsterling that you want to make into gold. In this case, it is a purple blue shadow. And you fuse it with a fodder monsterling that is yellow. And this basically lays out the chances of you winning. The thing that you want is a yellow target monsterling. You get that 25% of the chance. You win! Another outcome you can get is the non-target monsterling at 25% chance. This fodder will now inherit the 2 traits that your monsterling had. So it is basically a retry. If you have another purple blue shadow, you can just put that right back in and attempt this gambling again. So this is basically a neutral outcome. Down in the 4-star outcomes, there's a 25% chance that your blue shadow stays a blue shadow that is purple, and there's no change here. And of course, because the winning chance is 25%, you also have a 25% chance of a catastrophic loss, where you lose both your monsterling and also your material, and you just get a purple material that is completely useless. If you get this, it is just unlucky, and you have to do step 3 all over again. But if you get any of these outcomes, it's not that bad. You have a 25% chance of winning, a 50% chance of a neutral outcome of no change or retrying, and a 25% chance of a catastrophic loss. This gambling can also be done with blue materials instead of purple, if you do not have the purple stones to facilitate this. The chances are just slightly worse. Here, we have a 20% chance of you winning, a 20% chance of a retry, a 17.5% chance of a slight upgrade where you go from blue to purple, and this lets you do the purple gambling if you want to keep going. There is a 17.5% chance of a catastrophic loss where you lose both your mon and your yellow material and you get a purple trash instead. There is a 12.5% chance of no change and a 12.5% chance of a catastrophic loss that is even worse than the purple one. So, in summary, here you have a 20% chance of winning and a 30% chance of a catastrophic loss and a 50% chance of a basically neutral outcome. So the odds are very slightly worse than the purple, but this is still worth doing. It is not worth gambling with a green or a white. You should always just be gambling with a blue or a purple. Now, after you get your yellow target, you do it again. And with that, you'll have 2 monsterlings, each with 2 traits. Combine them together to get your perfect monsterling, which will cost 40 puri at this final step. This process will take around 100 puri if you use gold stones. But if you get unlucky with the gambling method and you keep losing, this can take upwards of several hundred puri with a lot of monsterlings killed. So you can get really lucky and get it in, like, I don't know, 80 puri, or you can get really unlucky and spend 300 puri on your stick muggers. So what traits are actually worth taking now that we know how to, properly convert the traits into value? Boss damage should be used on everyone, for obvious reasons. CDR is used on nearly everyone. Here, in this image, I have circled every single character that would like to have CDR in some way. Some of these characters, like Cloud or Skill Spam Ophelia, totally depend on CDR for their rotations. Some characters like Liho or Mina prefer to have CDR for smoother rotations. And then there's also a very few characters like Gabby or Yanhua or Penny that just don't need CDR at all. But as you can see here, most of the roster wants to have CDR. So CDR is something that you would likely want to put on your monsterling. Element Weak should be used on all the main DPS and sub DPS. As stated earlier, Element Weak, you should always be trying to fight on Element. So this is a very strong trait. So now we have 3 traits that are already locked in. What should be our last one? Generally, it's crit damage. If your crit damage is capped, you can go for element percent, crit rate, or attack percent. Why is crit rate not used? Well, if we have a base 5% crit rate, add in 7.5% food, 45% from gear rolls, and 11% from Amon, and 11% from Ice Fist Dude, we get around 80% crit rate with no traits. That is a lot of crit rate already for free. And we are comparing 5% crit rate with 15% crit damage, so crit damage tend to win out. A common question I get is, what about the class-specific traits? I'll tell you now, neutralization is a joke. The contents of why this is true is beyond the scope of this course. That is at least a 3rd-year course, and this is MONGIL Stardive 121. So if you continue to go down this major, you'll probably understand it in a future course. Brawl damage gain per trait is literally percents of a percent. Compared to, like, boss damage, which is a 10% damage boost, brawl damage, if you put it onto a trait, you get, like, I think it's around 0.7% damage boost every single trait that you put on. It is just terrible. Suppression does exactly what it says, but it only boosts small portions of your damage throughout the fights. You are not going to stagger your enemies that often. Even the strongest destroyer character in the game, which is Mina, only does around, like, a third of her enhanced basic attacks during staggers. So imagine your 7.5% damage boost from suppression traits is only active a third the time. Now it suddenly does not look very good. And finally, support only benefits some attacks of some characters. Why are you going after this 7.5% damage boost on like Yanhua's support skill when you can get like a, I don't know, a 7% damage boost on everything, including Yanhua's ultimate? That's the reasoning for that. So in nearly all cases, these 4 class stats are useless. So for the most part, you should be making Monsterlings with boss damage, CDR, element weak, and crit damage. And finally, what should I work on? This is my recommendation on what you should do with Monsterlings. First, make a Scar and an Ice Fist dude with 2 traits. These are your main Monsterlings for your main DPS. I would go boss plus CDR so they can be used on everyone. Optionally, you can make a temporary Amon with 2 traits to serve as the 3rd main DPS Monsterling until you get an element-specific one to move to your... and you can move your Amon to your sub-DPS later. While you have all these, you should be mutating for a 0-trait Eldorado and Fiend so that you can have them for your supporters. They do not need to have traits, they just need to exist, because you can benefit from their links without putting traits on them. And while you're doing this, slowly work on making your Scar and Ice Fist dude 4 traits. Next, you should try to make a yellow Golgak once you get it. Golgak is another thing that you should be mutating for. And you should put 2 traits on it before making it gold, because Golgak is a good monsterling that deserves to have 4 traits. You should also have a yellow Amon for your supports. This should also have 2 traits, because Amon, again, is a good monsterling. And you can also be taking the temporary Amon from step 1 and putting it here. Optionally, you can make a purple or a yellow Kustos for your Francis. Francis is a character that you will almost always be using, so you should have this Kustos for her. And then, finally, once you have all of these, you should finish your main DPS monsterlings. You should get Ice Fist and Scar maxed out with 4 traits, and whatever 3rd slot that you want for your main DPS. And finally, once you have everything done, finish the monsterlings for your support. Make another Golgak with 2 traits, make another Amon with 2 traits, work on traits for your Eldorado and Fiend if you want, and eventually max out everyone. So, we come to the end of this lecture, and I will be assigning you homework. The first thing you should be doing is reading the handout, MONGIL Stardive Guide Spreadsheet. I will have it linked in the description of this video, and there's also the link in an earlier slide. Next time you come in, there will be a quiz covering the contents of the guide spreadsheet, so make sure you read closely and take notes. One assignment that I want to assign is to create a yellow monsterling by next class. Everyone will, in class, show a new yellow monsterling that they made after watching this video. And your final assignment is to do some Reginula runs, because Reginula is a very cute kitty, and you deserve your Legendary Conquest points. Alright, that will be all. Again, if you have any questions, ask them in the comment section. I will not be having any office hours, and remember to do your homework. Goodbye, and see you in class next time.